5 letters here, just for everybody out there in Packerland and yourself today. RELAX. Relax. We're gonna be okay. I have just a new and increased love of life, and I've made decisions and changes and habits that put me in a lot better headspace.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of Packers After Dark. My name is Tyler. I do all the memeing, all the tweeting, all the fun stuff for Cheesehead TV. But speaking of Cheesehead TV, the original, the OG Packers content out there, I wanted to take a deep dive into all things Cheesehead TV, right? So when you look at, all the things that are in the Packers sphere and all the content and everything that goes around about what's going on with the team, I wanted to know what's going on around the team. So with me today are two what we can call friends of mine, I guess, two guys who started a website that, in my opinion, changed the course of the Packers blogosphere, which is much higher praise than they think they deserve. But it's true. I really do think they are some of the most influential people. We're actually going to dive right into it today. Corey Behnke and Aaron Nagler, my friends, how are you guys doing? As you guys like to say, how the hell are you?
I am well, Tyler. How are you? This is weird.
It is weird, right? So, like, normally you guys are the one on camera. You're the ones talking to people. You're the ones getting, the content out there, if you will. I'm doing a little bit more behind the scenes, but I wanted to jump in and just see what's up. You know what I mean? I wanted to take a deep dive, and if you're ready, let's just go right into it. I want to know where you guys began, right? And that's a broad question, but I mean, you guys knew each other. When was the first time that you guys met each other? I mean, so Aaron, you said before you're from Wisconsin, right?
Right.
So originally,
right.
Okay, grew up in Appleton, right? And Corey, where were you from originally? Wisconsin as well?
Yep, I was born in Green Bay, and my parents lived in Appleton at the time. From Brillion, Wisconsin, and my dad moved us to New London, where he had a bar, and then he lost his bar, and then he drove us across country to Los Angeles, and I lived in Los Angeles half my life.
Los Angeles. So, I mean, think about it, the time when you guys met what, like in college? Is that when you guys met first originally?
Yeah, we met at North Carolina School of the Arts. Corey,
so how did we get from Wisconsin to North Carolina? That's a good start. Aaron, I'll start with you. How did you make it? What was your goal of going to North Carolina State?
Well, I wanted to be an actor, and I had gone to DePaul out of high school. I was there for a couple of years, but I didn't like the program, so I came back to Appleton, and I just worked for a year or two, and then I wanted to get back out there. I auditioned for a few more schools. Got into NCSA. They had an excellent program, so I went down there. That was 96. We all know what happened in the Packer world in 96, and that's when I met Behnke, who was already there. He was I
was there for like 4 years. Yeah,
yeah.
I was already a junior.
You were a junior when we met, and I was just a freshman.
Wet behind a year's little freshman down there. Corey, how did you make it out there from Los Angeles? Did you want to? Is North Carolina State, are they known for acting, or what are they known for?
Well, technically, it's technically now it's the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. So they're one of 16 schools. It's the first state-supported art school in the country, thanks to Terry Sanford. Back in the 60s. But you'll like this story, Tyler, because it's an American Airlines story. It's an airline story. My mom was our first grade assistant teacher in my first grade class. In California, if you were an assistant teacher, you had to take classes. So she took a class for American Airlines reservations. And
Right.
American,
They have a reservation system down there in Raleigh, right?
They do. So they basically moved her out. They moved her to Raleigh. So I had to move to Raleigh, which really sucked if you're like 13 years old and you're trying to be an actor and you go from Los Angeles to Raleigh, North Carolina, or Cary, North Carolina. And so, yeah, so I wanted to get the heck out of there. And I went to high school at North Carolina School of the Arts. And there I was. And I was a huge Packer fan because of my grandfather. And so I'd probably been to, every time we'd go back to Wisconsin, he would take me to a game. I'd been to a game since I was like 7 years old. I literally remember the stadium was turned around a little bit more than it is right now. But I remember seeing the houses of Shadow Lane when I was like about 7 years old, 8 years old, the first time I went to a Bishop's charity game. And I remember pointing to my grandfather and saying, "What is that?" And I don't know if it was this house, but it was definitely these houses.
It was one of these houses, right?
Yeah. I was like, I pretty much had decided in my mind that I needed to have that.
What were you doing, Corey? What were you doing while you were down there? Before you had met Aaron and stuff like that. That was really were you even thinking about the Packers like at that time, or was it more of a?
Yeah, I have pictures of me in like really terrible 80s jumpsuits for the Packers. I always took the Wisconsin mantle. Well, Packers mantle, because for me the Packers were Wisconsin more than anything else. And I think when you're from Wisconsin, then you leave Wisconsin, it becomes more, I've heard this from a lot of people who actually like spend a lot of time here growing up and then they leave. It becomes even more special. Like there's a ton of people who like aren't even football fans and they leave Wisconsin and become Packer fans because they just miss it and they need that comfort food in their life.
Yeah, it's such a, I can definitely attest to that, living down here in Arizona now for almost 10 years. I mean, it's almost like a tangible thing that you can take with you, like there's not much, obviously there's Wisconsin food and Wisconsin culture and festivals and things like that. But when you leave and become a, pardon the pun, a transplant or whatever, like you tend to, that's something you definitely gravitate towards too. So Aaron, you go down there and you said it was closer to what, 96 you ended up down there?
When I went there.
96, and that was your freshman year down there?
That was my freshman year. And the rule was what they made you do as freshmen is we were, in the acting school, you had to perform a monologue in front of the entire school.
Yeah, the drama school, which is smaller than
the so like all 4 classes pile into this small ass room. Well, it was a bigger room, but we were all kind of put together. And I'm in the back sitting next to literally the dean of the school. And then Corey, because he's Mr. Cool, he's
no, you were doing your monologue.
4th year in. No, just let me tell the story. All right. Let me tell the story. And then Corey's sitting like with the cool kids in the back.
I had a briefcase.
And he had a briefcase. And
with your jumpsuit or?
No, I didn't have the jumpsuit
this
on.
Post jumpsuit,
but
this was post jumpsuit.
I did wear a dress I typically every other day I wore a dress at School of the Arts.
Art school style. Art school style.
So he's sitting in the back of the room. He's got his briefcase. He's got his dress on.
And I'm sitting next to the dean, right? And then my fellow classmates. And then it's my turn. So I get up, and what you had to do is you had to say your name, where you're from, and what monologue you're doing, what piece you're doing. So I say, I'm Aaron Nagler. I'm from Appleton, Wisconsin, which was my first mistake. And then I said, I'm doing Hamlet. So I go and I do my Hamlet. And then I come and I'm done.
You really do Hamlet?
Yeah, like it was bad.
You're crazy.
Bad. I know, right?
What were you thinking?
I forgot balls, man. I don't give a shit.
Wow. It probably was really bad too.
It was horrible. Right. So I come back, right, and I sit down. And I'm literally just about to sit down, and Behnke leans forward and yells, "Go Pack!" I don't know this guy. I've never met him before. He has never said a word to me prior to this. And I'm sitting next to the dean, so I'm like, I have no idea how to react. I don't know if this is words of like. It's great that you're excited that I'm from Wisconsin. I'm probably a Packers fan, though we've never talked about it. And I'm nervous as hell. I probably just did the shittiest Hamlet ever. And so I'm like, whatever. So then fast forward, I think it was like a week later or something. There was a meeting. This time it was in a small ass room. And Corey once again had his fucking briefcase. And I was lowly freshman sitting on the floor. There were a ton
There was nothing in the briefcase, by the way.
Of course not. You just carried it around.
It was just a stylistic choice.
Very much so. So I'm sitting there, and Corey is sitting on a table with his fucking briefcase. And I'm sitting there cross-legged, and I don't even remember what the fucking meeting was about, but we're going there. And at some point, Corey literally, I'm not exaggerating, drops the briefcase on my head.
I do not remember this, but I've heard
like
this very good.
directly on my head.
It wasn't on purpose.
And
though.
that was the beginning of who the fuck is this guy? Like, what the fuck is his problem?
I think it was an accident, though. I wasn't like an intentional. I dropped it on your head.
Sure, it was.
To your mind, I guess, in your mind's eye, it was.
Well, you know, you're a freshman. You know, like everything is like, you know, is either a slight or, you know, I'm just nervous. So I was like, this fucking guy, what the fuck is his problem? So that was kind of my attitude to Corey.
But we did have an in together because a guy in Aaron's class named Travis Smith, who's a huge Carolina fan.
Right.
Travis and I had worked at a restaurant the previous summer. So Travis had an in with my whole group of us juniors because we had all summer with him. We were like Travis. And so Aaron was friends with Travis and Mike. And so Aaron, we kind of had an in, so we started playing Madden together. Aaron would go to Travis's house and play Madden, and that's where
all night long.
So that's when you guys, is that when you guys first started talking or whatever? I mean, you have these interactions, right? You're walking through school, he's dropping briefcases, you're freaking out at each other, you know what I mean? But then so you guys first started.
Corey never freaked out at me because he just didn't give a shit. He didn't care.
Corey, what did you think? Who did you think this guy was? I mean, why did you even? You heard him say Appleton, so you're like, oh, this is my connection, right? This is
Nagler kind of had this Dan Aykroyd vibe at school
here we go.
He had that like Chicago, like I'm the stand-up straight man, but I am a DJ, and I also am like I like Depeche Mode and the Pet Shop Boys, and I want to sing in a band, and so there was a lot of that.
A lot of that.
You know, I never was very emo. It was more like rock and hip hop than emo. So he was a little emo for me.
A little too emo, right? So you're
too emo, yeah.
too much. Way too much.
So your first time that you guys had like a conversation. Take me back to that time. When did you guys first sit down and be like, okay, what's up? What's up with this guy?
You know, I don't think it was ever that clean cut. It was just because, like he said, because
Travis, around the same people.
Yeah.
Around the same people all the time, and we talked all the time, and inevitably we started talking about the Packers. And the other thing that was happening now was it was Big Blue. That was the house.
Yeah, so we had me and my buddies had this house called Big Blue, and we got it from one of the opera teachers who rented it out, and it was amazing. It was like a mansion. It had a hot tub, it had a pool table, it had and so the entire school would go there all the time, and so it was kind of known. And it wasn't because I was cool. It just so happened that I knew a friend of mine had the place before, and he had moved on and kind of gave it to us, which was awesome. So that was like the place to be. But also like playing Madden. You know, when people are playing Madden, I cannot root for any other team but the Packers. So if you're playing the Packers, I'm on your side, even if I don't like you.
Exactly.
So you guys got together.
So I would be at Big Blue, and we would start talking about the Packers. Essentially, is how it started. And then once we figured out we both liked the Packers, we had the connection when I saw him at parties or at school or whatever. We would instantly, there would be no pausing. We would dive into talking about the Packers. Like so much so that it annoyed the shit out of everybody around us because we would shut up about it.
So the main connection obviously was Green Bay, and you're sitting there, you're playing Madden, and you said this was around 96, right? So and this is like at the height of when Green Bay was, they were coming into it. They were obviously doing everything right. Yeah. Unstoppable, right? Unstoppable. And so you're sitting there and you've got this connection. Not only do you have this connection, but you have the fact that the team is really, really good at this point. So like you're obviously walking around campus and you're like, all right, we are this.
The best part was we had a movement teacher, Bob Francisconi, who was a huge 49ers fan. So of course, during this time, the Packers were just dominant over the 49ers.
Yes.
So we would rub it in his face all the time. It was in a fun way. Like he's a great guy.
Did you guys ever think like, okay, here we are, just hanging out and talking about the Packers? I mean, was it kind of an instant thing, or did you ever think you would start a website or do anything that had to do with the internet at that point, right? Because the internet hadn't even.
I was on. Okay, I just want to say this right now. I was one of the first people in my age group to be trading stocks. I was trading stocks as a sophomore in college in 1995 on Sure Trade. Sure Trade got bought by this other company, blah, 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 and now I still have my TD Ameritrade, which basically bought like 4 companies. But I was on the internet, but I also started streaming after I got out of school pretty early. So, but no, we never thought that. No, what it wasn't really until, well, what's interesting is we watched the Super Bowl together at Big Blue. So we had the 96 Super Bowl. Then we had all of our senior year, which we were like hanging out. We were in shows, my senior year, but Aaron was in a show with me. Like we were in shows together. We were buds. Like we were part of like the buddy group senior year. And I like lived with Travis, the guy we were talking about, on my senior year, and so Aaron was always over playing Madden at that point. Because
literally every
he had all of Travis. It was so great because Travis had all these like tells, like these great Carolina Panther tells, and so you could just tell like it'd be the second quarter, and you're like, and literally I'd look over at Nagler and I'd be like, bro, I'm like, I didn't have to like, it's like I'm like, he's gonna try to throw a bomb here, so then he called blitz, then he get a blitz. And then it was like the same game on repeat, but Travis just like loved it. He just was like glutton for punishment.
It was really good. But we watched the Super Bowl together,
and then the Denver Super Bowl at my dad's house
Super Bowl
in Apex.
That obviously sucked. Yeah. And then you graduated and you left me, you bastard.
Yep.
So Corey, you graduated and you're like, all right, this is it. And did you have any intention of keeping up with Aaron or anything?
Yeah,
like
we
that?
did. I mean, Tyler, back then we used to use this thing called the telephone.
Back then, okay, yeah, you would call each other. Would you have a pager? A pager?
I did. You know what?
I did have a pager, actually.
I did. So I was one of the last actors to have a pager voicemail system. It cost $12 a month. And so what would happen is, so you'd put your quarter in the payphone and in like when they had those, right? So you put your quarter in Manhattan, you get a page and you're like, oh, I got an audition or I got a job. Okay,
that was me my first year in New York. Absolutely.
And you go to the payphone and you put the quarter in. Okay, if it just rings, you hang up because then you get your quarter back. If you put the quarter in and it doesn't ring, you got to pay for the quarter, but it means you got a voicemail. So you're like, oh yeah, let's go.
Here we go.
That's so brilliant.
I remember walking around the city, like learning New York and just waiting for my pager to go off. It was so great.
I didn't.
What sent you to New York? Did you have a job offer?
I didn't even have an email account until I got to New York.
Wow. No, everybody who graduates from the drama class at the time at School of the Arts, pretty much 99.9% of all people go to New York. We do a showcase. You like try to get an agent. So I got an agent, and was trying to make it.
Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit, right? So obviously there was a little bit of a gap, right? Aaron, you were still in college while Corey was out doing his thing. Yep. I mean, what were you doing during that time? Were you ever thinking like, man, I wish I could go off and do whatever? Or were you just solely focused on school and you're trying to, get done what you need to get done?
Like Corey said, I was all about acting, music. I was in a band and I would play music. I would go home for Christmas break and like we'd record and I'd come back and play it for people and no one gave a shit, of course.
Show it off.
I actually went a couple times after when Aaron was in Wisconsin for Christmas, where I'd be in Wisconsin and I would go see his band. Yep. Or like we would go and hang out and like just get drunk and talk about Travis Jervey in Wisconsin. So that was happening in that time period. Yeah, but it really wasn't until Nagler left college, came to New York, and he lived with me. You lived with me for a little bit.
And then I actually lived at your place when you were on tour. I can't remember what it was.
Acting company, I think.
Acting company, that was it. And so I kind of basically subletted Corey's place. And it was funny because there were supposed to be other people there, but for whatever reason, they were gone as well. So I basically lived in this 3-bedroom apartment up in myself for like 3 months. Like it was great. It was so bizarre.
But like I graduated in 98, Nagler graduated 2000. So it really wasn't until like we about 2004 or 5, we would consistently be talking on the phone because every week. He was married he got married, you got married, and then had Madeline and so he was in Queens, and we would talk like every week about the Packers because that's kind of like where the inkling started, and then I was
where it really started. Yeah,
Yeah, and I was messing with WordPress all the time because I was like really into PHP and HTML at that time.
So is that when, I mean, that in that point of the internet, I mean, people were really, it was mostly forums, right? At that point, I
Yeah.
mean, people, there wasn't a ton of like actual websites out there other than, I mean, obviously websites, but I'm saying like it was more forum based chatting, right? There wasn't, you know,
What was the one? What was
social
the one?
media.
There's
you
the
know?
one that still exists. There's Packer Forum.
Right.
There's the one that Alex Talish had. There's like there were like four
Packers Lounge.
Packers Lounge, but there were like four forums
Yeah.
that everybody was at. And there
Four
were like
by
two,
four. Was
four
it
by
4x4?
four. Yeah,
One
there
of
were
them.
there were like
Yeah.
4 or 5, and I thought about starting a forum, but the software is really like clunky when you have a forum. It's like really annoying. It's really hard to kind of
Sure.
start. And yeah, you had forums. You got Packer Report. So Packer Report came, but it came like 5 days late. So whenever the game was, you got it like that Saturday after, and you're just like, okay, that's great. So it was kind of like you kind of got delayed news, and then you had we could read Green Bay Press Gazette kind of, I think, online, but
Yeah,
it
there
wasn't
was-
all the articles.
No, it was like select articles, and I would print them out and read them on the train. But then, so at this point, like Corey said, about 2006, I want to say 5 into 6. Oh God, Chad's in the chat. ×4. That was it, Chad.
×4.
Well remembered.
It's still around, I think.
Yeah, it is. I think it is still around. So, but at this point, we got pregnant with our second, my ex and I was on the road with the Full Monty. That was the last acting gig I had before I basically shut it down because being on the road, it just sucked. I was away all the time. I mean, I remember I spent the Thanksgiving prior to coming home, I was at a fucking Arby's on Thanksgiving, down in Arkansas.
Did they have the meats?
And I'm like, they had the meats. And I was like, what am I
Meat
doing with my
sweats,
life?
baby.
What am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
My kids at home, and we're going to have so you had to give a month's notice. I gave my month's notice. And when I got back, I obviously had to get a gig. I got a job at a newspaper syndicate where I dealt with angry editors basically every day. And I needed some kind of creative outlet. Like I was like, I got to do something. I got to create somehow. I can't just wilt away here. So at that point, my favorite thing on the internet was Cliff Christl's post-game chats for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Like after the game, it got to the point where I almost looked forward to those chats more than I looked forward to the game. Like, because it was Mike Sherman years and you knew what they were. Like they were always knocking on the door, but it was like never going to happen. And Amon Green was awesome. And that was, that was going on. And Brett was awesome, but he was clearly getting up there, whatever. But Cliff just told it like it was, man. He was so unvarnished and real and a real curmudgeon. He would just absolutely ether idiots who
was he the first? Was he the first to do something like that, where he talked directly to the fans?
I don't know if he was the first, but he was the one that really caught my attention.
Yeah,
I think he was the first on the internet, but there were definitely. I'm trying to think of the reporter who used to do it, the Q&A in the newspaper that my grandfather.
Oh, in the newspaper, yeah, like at a column or something like that, where people could write
where
in.
You can write in and then
here's where my hubris, as usual, steps in because Cliff retired that year, and Idiot Aaron had started a blog called Aaron Nagler's Football Report that 2 people read, my dad and Corey. And that was it. It was only 2 people.
But I only read it because Aaron told me about it.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like he was thirsting for football.
I didn't find it on the internet. I was like, oh, you're doing this. That's interesting.
Right.
I'm thinking about doing a WordPress blog.
And I literally did it because Cliff retired. And I was like, the internet, someone needs to take up the mantle. And that was literally why I started. That was legit why I started writing about football on the internet. Because I loved him.
Shout out, first of all, shout out to Cliff. Any Cheesehead TV fans, shout out to Cliff, man. That's amazing. So wow, so he's the inspiration at this time. And Corey, you had already been, like you said, you were talking about starting WordPress, blog or something like that.
Well, I basically was like, look, I keep hearing about these podcasts. We should do a podcast because we basically talk for once a week about the Packers. So what if we just did that on the phone?
Right.
But I know it sucks to come over here, but I think I can get the equipment. I think we can do this podcast thing, and then we can have it on a website.
What was your day job at that point, Corey?
I was a freelancer. I freelanced as a post producer, and I was starting to do live production then.
So you were already in a position where you had the expertise, you had the, at least the idea of what to do, to start something like this.
I mean, I had taught myself PHP and HTML. I taught myself enough WordPress. I was figuring out the plugins. So I was like, once we kind of came up with the name based on what we could get for the domain, I was like, okay, I mean, yeah, I'm the tinkerer. I've always been the tinkerer. It's never been like, it's really never been like I have all the money in the world. That's actually not true. I've actually bootstrapped most of the stuff that I have. I did not have my parents give it to me. I was in debt until I was in my mid 30s. I'm in my mid 40s now, so that tells you something. And it was just kind of like, oh, I like doing this, and I'm really into gear. Like if I can touch gear. This was the thing. Didn't have a lot of money, and I would be like, oh, I want that. And people would be like, oh, you should rent, you shouldn't buy. And I'm always the kind of person where like, if I buy it and figure it out, like I can move on and I can sell that as a service. And I never really realized that. And it really helped me because I'd get the podcasting gear. And then once we did podcasting, I think we did podcasting just for like 2 years. And before we were like, okay, we got to do video.
Let's do a video, right?
So you had done the audio podcast before, or was that, so like Packer Transplants, the name, right? Packer Transplants, this is our show. Like that idea had existed for years, even prior. Was that prior to the website, or was that was that when you started the website?
No, basically, here's how I remember it. I mean, Nagler might see it differently, because my memory is usually terrible. But how I understand it is Nagler had Aaron Nagler's football blog.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I've got this idea. I remember sandboxing Cheesehead TV.
Wait a second. What kind of, that was the name, the official name, Aaron Nagler's football blog?
No, it was Aaron Nagler's football report.
Oh.
Okay. Much better. I was going to say.
Thank you very much.
So I was like, okay, well, we need to, if we're going to have a podcast, we should just merge what you're writing, because I'm not going to write a lot of stuff. And I actually wrote, there's a lot of articles I've written. Don't read
Corey Behnke's breaking news.
Corey Behnke's bylines are amazing. I highly suggest everyone go to cheeseheadtv.com.
Here's what's hilarious. I'm pretty sure that there's still calendar entries. So I used to leave a calendar entry because my best blog post was always my top 15 Packer blogs. Okay.
Yep.
Now, the first time I wrote my top 15 Packer blogs, I couldn't find 15 Packer blogs.
Oh no!
So I was pulling stuff out.
What year was that?
I think it was 2008.
2007.
Okay, 7 or 8. So it was basically him and I writing. And then what was funny is Brian Carrevu. Okay, so Brian Carrevu had Railyard Central. Railbird Central. Sorry. I got Railyard in my head because of Green Bay.
Right. Sorry, Brian.
Railbird Central, and we were fans. So we were like, wow, how cool. And Brian would go to training camp, and he'd have and it was amazing. And we were just like, man, what if we did what Brian did? What if we got that cool, that big?
That was the goal.
That was literally the goal.
That was all we wanted in life.
So I was like, well, if we merge your blog, and then we make a brand together, and then we add our podcast, that might be something.
Basically, Corey was very he knew, man. He had it all set. I'll never forget. There was a very specific phone conversation where I was like, look, I think we can make this work. Well, I can come, because it is, when you move to the city, that's the thing. You always, you move to the city and you think, oh, I'm going to see everybody, but you never see anyone because you all live in different spots in the city. And Corey was pretty damn far away from me. I mean, it took me an hour to get there every week.
Were you already in Queens at that point?
Yeah, I was in Astoria. So, but he said, I remember specifically this conversation where he was like, you just keep writing. We'll make it a website. I'll contribute when I can. We'll do the podcast, and we'll call it Cheesehead TV. I'll never forget.
No, but it is true. But that's because I remember searching for cheese. I was all about domain names.
I know
most people know this, right? It's like, I have an idea. What domain name is available to me, to my idea?
In the early days, that was it, though. I mean, on the internet, right? Everybody was just searching for domain names that they could secure, because I think people thought, maybe in the future I can make money off of this domain name specifically, right?
Yep. And so
so it was you, Corey. So that's breaking news, right? It was you that came up with the name Cheesehead TV.
Well, I mean, after an exhaustive search, we also have
sure.
I believe we have packerworld.com.
Packer World.
That used to be a section of the website. It actually kind of still is.
It still is part of the
There's a
app.
live part. Yeah.
By the way, some breaking news: we are updating the app this season. So
this off season.
I know everybody's like
everybody's worried about that. Yeah. So he calls you and he says, "Hey, I've got this. Let's put it all together. Let's do this. Let's do this website, Cheesehead TV.
And I was like,
.com.
I was like, okay, cool. And to my ex's eternal credit, because I'm going to do this fucking podcast that's going to take like basically an entire night once a week out of my life, and we've got a very young child at that point. And she said it. She was like, it gives you an excuse to see Corey every week. Like it's something at that point I never did. Like Corey was a really good friend at this point, and I never
didn't hate each other anymore. No,
the hate had dissipated.
Even after we didn't say he dated my sister in college, by the way.
Oh, okay. Nagler, man.
I have many reasons to hate him. So let's just put that out there.
Relax. I was nothing but a gentleman.
Nothing. Okay, so the dating of your sister had passed. Any animosity had passed.
Yep.
You guys are best friends at this point.
And he's working at Blackstone. He's already in PR, so he had some kind of idea of like, what because he worked in PR. I do think that helped him to understand like messaging,
the press side,
side.
And what was the goal? What was the goal? I mean, originally, like you're thinking, okay, I've got this website. I want to be, as cool as Brian, or I want to do, all these things or whatever. But I mean, what was really the goal, like behind this? Like, obviously, you talked about, the history with Chris and stuff like that. I mean, think about, okay, so the current, I guess it's a slogan, right? Devoted to Green Bay Packers fans worldwide, right? Where did the worldwide thing come into, right? Was that the original goal?
Yep.
That was day one. We legit, we would get messages from people who were stationed all over the world. Like it was crazy. That wasn't something that we, when we very, very, very first did it, it was, we wanted to talk about the Packers and we did it anyway. So why not record it? It was this weird kind of symmetry though, because it was right before social media started.
Yeah.
You remember Twitter started in 2008 and even
then Nagler was like, we have to have a Twitter account. I'm like, I don't want to add another widget to the WordPress. Like really, how long is this going to be a thing?
You know how much code that is?
Hilarious. But
wait, and when you mean stationed, I hate to butt in, but when you mean stationed, were you talking about like military people and things like that?
That was the
right,
thing.
because this is post 9/11, right? And in the United States, like it was very patriotic, right? Everybody had wondered about everything. So you had people that were Packers fans stationed all over the world, right?
We got messages from men and women who were stationed in the Middle East, who were in Germany, Korea, Japan. We got it for India. Like we got everywhere. Like we would get emails at cheeseheadtv.com and it was just like kind of mind-blowing. But then we had used devoted to Packers fans worldwide and we were like, okay, yeah, that's it. It was funny because we kind of found the spine of the thing just kind of stumbling out of the gate. Like it wasn't like
but it had a play
vision.
It came from that idea though that like we needed something else, not just for us, but for other people to have something else other than Packer Report. There wasn't really anything for people outside of the
You're trying to fill that void, right? A lot of people that are outside, because you're not going to go down the street and pick up the Journal Sentinel or the Press Gazette, right? You're trying to find something that's out there. So you get the website started. What was the first year of we've got this down. Here's our shtick. Here's what we know what's going on. We know what our slogan is. We know what our brand is. Like, what was that first year like? Were you making any money? Were you doing anything? You know what I mean? Was it?
We still don't make money.
By the way, Corey is literally hundreds of thousands of dollars.
We still don't make money. I think the first milestone was probably when we got Brian on board.
Yeah.
That's when we kind of grew up, where it was like,
and
okay.
That's sentimental as much as it is, good for content too, because you guys had already thought about Brian, right? You were thinking this guy is doing it right when it comes to early days content, right? And now he's a part of your team.
And Brian really wanted to be a beat writer, whereas like
Hmm.
I didn't have
Columnist.
aspirations of being a beat writer. I mean, I can hunt and peck on a keyboard, but I'm not a writer. Brian could
Sure.
really write and knew the game and knew what the hell he was looking at and knew how to put it down. And like, he was just great and he fucking killed it. He killed it. I mean, he was on par with anything you read in the paper, anything you read online. He was right there. And
Was he your first person? Was he the first person to have
us
that you guys had on? Other than you guys,
so,
yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't so like Jersey Al was starting to do, like, he had Jersey Al's blog,
Right.
and like since I was doing top 15 every other year sometimes, because I would totally like it takes me a really long time to write anything.
Right.
So he was kind of coming up, and he was like getting the stable of writers that we were never very good at.
Right.
Of like recruiting people, but also, the Green Bay Press Gazette had come to do our podcast, to shoot the podcast and do an article.
Right.
There were like, the New York Times had that article, and then Aaron was in it, and it was about Aaron working at Blackstone so it was kind of like we were seeing this kind of rise, and then Aaron was really focused on it and was kind of parlaying that into, career, right? And that's where there were a couple of times Cheesehead TV almost died. And the first time, well, maybe only one time, and it's this time, where basically Nagler, like, without Nagler, I was like, I don't want to do this. I can't write. We have no writers. Brian's kind of gone, and that's when
What year was this?
What year was this? It's right before you got it's right before you got Bleach. No, you were in Bleacher Report. Who is the person that wouldn't let you do stuff? You took a job where you definitely could not write for Cheesehead.
That was Gannett. That was long. That was way later.
But you weren't really writing for the site anymore. Like,
no,
we were
still doing transplants, but that's about it. I just didn't have time because I was doing Bleacher Report and then I was doing Sports Illustrated. But wait, before we get there, I do have to say this because I love this part of kind of the maturation of Cheesehead TV. When we first started, it was legit. I would go there, I would buy a 6-pack at the bodega on the corner, come upstairs, Corey would be set up, blah, blah, blah. So, and then I would start drinking as fast as I could. And Corey would smoke up and we would start. And basically towards the end of the show, every week, Corey was pretty fucking high and I was pretty fucking drunk. And that's what we were doing.
But not like Matt Ramage drunk, though.
Matt's here too, by the way. Hi, Matt.
Hey, shout out to Matt.
Not quite that drunk. Okay, let's just call a spade.
No, absolutely. But the best part about this is like that's us, right? That's where we're at. We're like doing this podcast and we don't know what we're doing and blah blah blah. And then ESPN literally emails us and pitches Jason Wilde coming on our show. They're like, "Would you consider having Jason Wilde come on Packer Transplant?" We fucking lost our minds because
wasn't our first guest Rob Demovsky, though?
I think he might have been one of the first.
And Aaron had wrote a post that was basically like, "I want to flick Rob Demovsky in the dick" or something. It was like, no, wait a second. You were the Rob hater. You searched Rob Demovsky and Cheesehead TV. It was literally the top article. Like, why is Rob Demovsky a dick?
Well, this brings up an interesting point, right? So you guys are doing this thing where it's completely just out of bounds to what normal coverage of a football team is at this point, right? And obviously there's going to be some backlash to that, right? So I mean, what are some of the things that you guys encountered, such as, Aaron writing its article or whatever, you know what I mean? But what are some of the things that you guys encountered from the old school traditional, journalistic beat, that came in there? Now, obviously, Aaron, you were at this point, had started working for the beat or anything like that? I mean, what were you doing that was Packers related? This was way later, right?
Well, and we did the Super Bowl. Like, the thing that we kind of glossed over is like, we did do the Super Bowl. So we had brought, so Jersey Al was, we brought Jersey Al on board around the Super Bowl, I feel like, but it was me, Jamie. No, he hadn't been on by then. You're right. It was me, Brian, and Jamie.
Right.
Yeah, me, Brian, and Jamie were at the Super Bowl. Right. Nagler didn't go, but Nagler set up all the credentialing, so he had already kind of like gotten in at NFL and was like getting us credentialed for stuff through the NFL, not the Packers, obviously.
Sure.
So really, I think the first time I felt like, holy crap, like I was a photographer at the Super Bowl, right? So I was in the same. That was kind of weird because I hadn't been in the beat. Like we'd only been there enough. So like, you know, Tom Silverstein and Bob McGinn and I mean all these people, some were nice. Some were just like, who the F are these people? What is going on here? And that was kind of the first time where there was some backlash, but they didn't really know who I was. Rob knew who we were, and like
Rob was great. Rob was always
great to us.
Always great. I will say the moment I think the Packers understood who we were and they wanted nothing to do with us was when they used to have Fan Fest, and
I came as the paparazzi.
We carpet bombed.
We filmed everything. We posted everything.
It's still, by the way, Cheesehead TV YouTube. If you go all the way back to the beginning, there is like Dom Capers explaining what
Capers, Donald Driver,
Lynn Dickey.
So that's all from because I've seen those videos. That's all from FanFest. That's
all from FanFest.
Yeah, and Mark Murphy.
Mark
Murphy was sitting in the back. That was like the 2013 FanFest, right? 2012.
Well, no, wait.
What?
I
No.
don't know.
No. What was it though? I mean, for those who don't know, like what was FanFest? What did the Packers put on? What was their
glorious?
It was awesome, man. They had the atrium open and they had like all sorts of like booths set up.
It was like a Packers trade show.
Yeah,
and
they would have old school players and some recent players.
They'd have like keynotes, and then they'd have side rooms, and then they'd have
kind of like they do it. So kind of like they do at training camp now, where you have all the carnival type stuff, or is it more? Except better,
all inside, and then
it was all inside, and like I'll never forget, like Larry Bechtel and James Campen breaking down O-line play with video. It was
at FanFest. You've got coaches talking you.
It was
like
awesome,
coach's
dude.
tape.
It was
breaking down the tape,
and then I'd be recording on my little DV camera, and Mark Murphy would be in the back, like just looking at
watching
me,
just
literally staring me down. Like, what is this? And like they knew who Cheesehead TV was then. If they didn't know before,
that was the point.
What was the relationship like? I mean, the Packers they didn't care for you guys at all, right?
I think Aaron Popke still hates me.
Aaron Popke doesn't hate you.
Who's Popke? What did Popke do?
He's got more important things to worry about than us.
That's true.
What was Popke's good? He was PR?
Popke was in PR for a long time, and now he's basically kind of the head of the corporate side. Like he handles Mark Murphy and all of that stuff. Like anytime you see any of the corporate announcements, anytime Mark is speaking in public, almost anytime, Aaron's the one handling PR.
Got it.
But he had originally come up through the football side of PR, and at that time, the head of PR now is Jason Wallers. Back then, it was Jeff Blum, who absolutely hated us.
Jeff Blum would go 2 or 3 times, and he follows me on Twitter now. Jeff Blum, literally 2 or 3 times, got in my. I don't really fucking care. He literally got in my way while I was trying to like shoot Aaron Rodgers one time, and I had a full credential on. He would just go in front of me all the time.
Scary.
So we were banging our head against the wall because we had been at this point, like Corey said, I had been credentialed for the combine for years at this point. We went.
Now, how did you get those credentials with the NFL? I mean, what was that? What started with that?
I was working at Blackstone, and we were blogging away. I was doing videos and stuff, and we were doing the podcast. And the New York Times had their piece, and I just remember I put in. I applied for credentials as Cheesehead TV. Like a total neophyte idiot, and I got turned down. And I thought, I tried, but I tweeted about it. This was like 2009, I want to say. It's right after Twitter just started.
1 year, 1 year after Twitter.
Community had begun. The NFL community had begun on Twitter, and I just said, gave it a shot, got turned down. I'll try again next year. And literally the next day, sitting at my desk at Blackstone, I got a call from Mike Signora, who is still with the league, saying, Aaron, I had several messages yesterday from people telling me that you're legit. So tell me why I should let you in the combine.
Wow.
And I said, this is what I do, blah, blah, blah. This is the gig. This is how we produce our content. I basically just kind of said what Cheesehead TV was and what we did. And he said, all right, I'm going to let you in. And it was because of calls from Bob Glauber of Newsday, who is still one of the greatest guys I know in this profession, and Greg Bedard, who worked for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel covering the Packers at the time. They both literally called Mike independently and said, this kid knows what he's doing. Let him in.
Bob and Greg?
Bedard was our second guest, right? So we would have Bedard on, and then we had the Bedard siren.
We had the Bedard siren. Every time he came on, we would have a red light that would go around.
Those guys were ahead of their time. You know what I mean? They were interested in that kind of thing.
It's funny too, because now Bedard kind of runs his own version of Cheesehead TV, covering Boston sports.
So you got these credentials. You're going in. Corey, you were talking about, man, this is it, right? We are covering the Super Bowl. This is crazy. You know what I mean? What are you feeling at this time that makes you think like, okay, everything that I had done the past, 4 or 5 years, was going to be worth it with Cheesehead TV? I mean, what was that, the pivotal moment, or was there something later down the road, maybe even something closer to present day, that made you think like, this is actually something that's sustainable, something we could do?
I mean, I never thought it was something that was sustainable. There were many, many times at Cheesehead TV where I was literally like, this is unsustainable. I can't do this anymore. Because
I think we glossed over that. I mean, what were some of those points that were like, hey, this is the day it's not going to work anymore?
I just remember like, it was just like, because I, with the exception of like the last couple of years, I run support for the site. I am the support team. I am the design.
You are
team.
IT.
I am the development, right? Even today. So like, I remember distinctly, like it always would be like when I was going on vacation, or like I'm with some friends, I remember going down to Jersey Shore and getting a call. The site is down. And like, I remember like I had it on, I would keep increasing the size of the server of where I put it. And like, I just couldn't keep the damn thing up. And there was many, many years Nagler would just be like, oh, again. And I'm like, well, and like, I was just like, what do you want me to do? I can't, if I keep increasing the cost, we're not making enough money to offset the increase, right? It's why startups need so much money to burn through, right? Because you have to get to a certain size before you offset your cost. So I'm like, holy crap, this is not costing $8 a month anymore. Now it's $34 a month. Now it's $60 a month. Now I need 2 servers. Now I need this. And I'm just like, at what point is it going to increase? So I was like, okay. And I don't know. It just, what I always kind of banked on with Cheesehead TV was that I used it personally to have personal growth of like, I learned switching on it. I learned how to cut a show. I had an S video mixer. I basically like kept challenging myself to make it better and better of what I wanted it to be. And ultimately there were things we did like for instance, when we kind of came back before when Aaron was still at Gannett, but he could do stuff. When did we did the tear deck thing where we did the training camp? It was before you were at Gannett though. I think it was before, because you could still do stuff. It was LiveX just started. It was 2015. Right. And we went to training camp, and Brian Margasa.
Oh yeah.
Is that when you were standing there with the microphone and stuff like that, and all those videos on YouTube?
Yep.
So this is, we're moving into now, we're past the Super Bowl. We're moving into the point where you guys are, starting
Aaron
to get a
quit
little bit
Cheesehead
of
TV.
Well, and this is what I want to get to, right? So what year did you say, was it after the championship? I mean, what did you say, like, okay, I want to go do this Packers thing full time? Did you get offered a gig that you just couldn't turn down, Aaron? I mean,
no. I mean,
why did you leave?
I'll give you the kind of fast forward version here. So I was at Blackstone doing both. I would wake up in the morning, kiss Madeline goodbye. I'd be at work until 6, come home, have a triple shot cappuccino, and then have an hour with Madeline and an hour with my wife. They'd go to bed, and I'd be up until like 2 or 3 writing, breaking down film, doing whatever. I'd get 3-4 hours of sleep, wake up, do it again. And that was like, now Twitter was a thing. I was always on my phone. I had TweetDeck, but it was a Excel spreadsheet program that looked like Excel, but it was really TweetDeck, and I was following along with tweets from practice. So the boss would walk by, yep, just crunching the numbers, and no, I'm really finding out like who's playing left tackle, etc. So I lived like that for 2 years, and then finally we kind of, like Corey said, we were getting press and whatever. Then Bleacher Report basically made an offer where I was going to lose. I was going to take a monster cut of pay. But it was like I was killing myself working these 2 gigs basically, because I was doing my regular 9 to 5 and I was doing Cheesehead TV. And again, to my ex's credit, she was like, just do it. Just you're doing it anyway, and it's absolutely murdering you. Just we'll deal with the loss of salary, so to speak. Just go do this, because if you don't, like, do it with Bleacher Report, because then you'll be doing it full time. You'll actually be kind of learning. and growing rather than just like trying to like do this website that at that point we didn't really have aspirations
Trying
of
to
it
like stay
being
afloat.
a
You know what I
job,
mean?
you know?
Yeah.
So I went to Bleacher Report and headed up their NFL video group. They had just started here in New York.
But you
And
could still do Cheesehead. You
and I could still do
the
Cheesehead
show.
TV.
Yeah.
And then I went to Sports Illustrated, and then I was at FanDuel for a year, and I could do Cheesehead TV through all of that. Where it really changed was when I went to Gannett.
What year was that?
It was
2016, I think.
16,
right?
I want to say, yeah.
Yeah, and then we had to make the pivot. So that's when Cheesehead TV almost died.
Yeah.
Because that's when we basically went to Jersey Al because we needed writers. We needed like a sustainability of like, hey, you know, and that's when we teamed up with Jersey Al and that kind of made Cheesehead TV into what it is today, really, because, you know, even though it is based on one personality, that's where we grew into like our multi-headed personalities that we are.
How many writers did you guys have before, like between 2010, 2016? I mean, you had a rotating carousel of writers, or is it?
It was me and Brian did for a while, and then Brian was gone. I can't even remember when he made the jump, but all of a sudden Brian wasn't there. And I remember I was going to Bleacher Report, and I think Zach Cruz mentioned it on Twitter today. When I went to Bleacher Report, I couldn't post as much for Cheesehead TV as I had been. So Zach started writing for us, but we never had many. It was
not until we made the move to Jersey Al. And Jamie was a moderator for all our game days.
The OG moderator.
Yeah, so we had like game day live blogs. I mean, we still had so much going on. Like there was so much, there was so much work going on, but it not necessarily was like payoff.
On top of your daily lives too, right?
Yes,
I mean, like you said, Nagler, you were. This was causing, you know, almost family strife, you know, because you're trying to balance everything, right? I mean, that's got to be tough.
There was no balance.
Yeah, that's got to be, that's got to be so incredibly tough. I mean, just thinking about, you know, trying to do all those things at once, and you know, so you get to this head, right? It's 2015, 2016. And,
it was 2016
Corey,
because it was my first year on the beat was 2016 because it was when they went 4-6 to start, and then they ran the table. So
got it. So I mean, yeah, it's 2016, and you're just, you know, you're at this point where Corey, I mean, you're like, we got to find something else to do this, otherwise, I don't know how it's going to keep going. I mean, what were you guys feeling at that time? What were you thinking?
I mean, I pretty much thought that Cheesehead TV was just going to die.
Yeah.
Because I knew that Gannett was not going to, you know, Gannett hated me. So I knew that like that was never going to be a thing. And, you know, I don't know.
Did you think somebody would buy it off you guys? I mean, at that point, or not even, it wasn't even really worth much. I mean, right. I mean, it was just a bunch of people.
It's still not worth much.
We always said, we always joked as like the only people we would sell to are the Packers. Like,
right.
You know, because everybody else, because that's the other thing. We got approached a lot because when we were starting out, there were so many other blogs just starting.
That's what you did. You got part of a blog network.
And then networks would come in and go, oh, be part of our network, be part of SB Nation, or be part of, you know, Bleacher Report or whatever. And we always said, like, no, man, we just want to, like, if the Packers wanted to talk to us, maybe. But, like, other than that, we just wanted to, the thing we loved about it was that we were independent.
The independence, the independence that you could say what you wanted to say and go back to the OG days of, you know, not having to worry about, you know, whatever somebody thought of, you know, like I said, like the old journalistic, you know, beat writers and stuff, you know, they always had to report to somebody, right?
So when I was on the beat, that was what was killing me.
Sure.
So there I am, and I've got to do social, and I got to do video, and Bob McGinn hates me, and it's like I'm wondering what the fuck I did. Like, why did I make this choice? Because if I had an offer on the table from Sports Illustrated to cover the NFL full time, and I chose the Gannett gig, and just because it was so, I don't know, crazy to me that I could cover the Packers professionally. Sure. I was like, I got to make this leap, you know? So I did it
for the Green Bay Press Gazette.
For the Green Bay Press Gazette, like, which helped found the team, for Christ's sake.
The OG Packers coverage. Right?
I'm thinking I'll never forget driving up that first day on the beat from Appleton to Green Bay, and this gorgeous day, and the wind's whipping through my hair. I'm listening to Depeche Mode. Life is perfect. And then it all went to shit when we had that first meeting, and I've talked about that a lot on Transplant, so I don't need to be here. But
basically,
I'm just like,
basically the moral of the story is all my fault. Is the moral? Of
no. I mean, Bob was predisposed to hate me anyway. But
Bob worked at
the Milwaukee
worked
Journal Sentinel.
at the
He
Sentinel
worked
at
at,
that time, right?
but it was bought by Gannett a few years earlier.
Got it.
But so there were moments on the beat that were great, but for the most part, you have to produce the content that they're after. You got to, there's X amount of stuff you got to do, and I hated most of it, and I thought it was so clickbait, ridiculous. And I get it, I understand it's a local entity, a local paper that they are so up against it revenue wise, so they do everything that all the clickbait stuff, etc. I hated it. It was sucking my will to live. And so I was in this weird kind of dichotomy of, I'm covering the Packers. This is awesome. I'm in the press box for all these games. I'm legit hanging out at, halftime, talking to people in personnel and on the coaching staff and whatever. It's like, it's this weird, like, kind of surreal experience for a guy who grew up as a Packers fan, but I'm fucking hating the job. I'm just hating it. And
isn't that amazing how you can get to a point where you're like, wow, this is something I've always not necessarily thought you always wanted to do, but this is something I always wanted to be around, right? And you get to what you think is the peak of the mountain, and it's just not what you thought it wanted, what you thought it was going to be.
That's how credentials are for a team, but that's for everyone.
Right.
That's something I learned. The Super Bowl aside, regular credentials are the death. You are on a leash. You have agreed to abide by the terms of the team.
Right.
Sure.
Anybody who thinks any differently is crazy. So what do you get? You get their version of the truth.
Yep. 1,000%.
So it's not like, Aaron, it's not like they shut you up completely. I mean, you were able to still do live chats and stuff like that.
Well, that's what's so funny is that is where things really turned, because I started doing those live Facebook chats every day.
Was that your idea?
Yeah. And Corey was
Cliff, right?
Yeah, right. Kind of. But Corey was like, that's pretty good. Like, that's pretty engaging. Like, people seem to really like it. And I was getting like, it was stupid. It was just me in my fucking bedroom. I'd set up my phone and I'd do Facebook Live, and I'd get like 500 people, like, just watching for a half hour, like, which was kind of crazy to me. And this is like 2016, whatever. But it kind of worked. So Corey was like, okay, that's kind of cool. So here's where it all turned. So I'm like, I'm dying at this job, right? So I pitch to Gannett, the Green Bay Press Gazette. Corey and I were obviously still friends, still talking. And we were like, Corey was like, I really want to do.
Well, we hadn't done transplants.
We hadn't done transplants in 2 years.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't allowed to. So I pitched to Gannett. I was like, let's we were going to hire LiveX, but Corey basically pitched, I'll give you all these services for free.
$20,000.
I just want to be able to take whatever footage we have and cut up a kind of, a sizzle reel and market it, to clients and say, look what we can do. And I was like, this is a great opportunity to kind of get back working with Corey and do it with the Packers. And at this point, Corey had bought the house he's sitting in now, although it was very different then. And we pitched this show for training camp. We were going to do a live training camp show. We were going to do, reporting from the field. We were going to do live interviews. We're going to have players come over, blah, blah, blah. And I pitched it. And I said I still fucking remember the email, Corey is going to produce it. Corey is going to be involved. Okay. They ran it up the flagpole, supposedly.
I was on CC'd on some threads where they were like, it was fine. It's fine.
It was totally fine. And they said, I think their only stipulation was, if we don't like the content or we don't think it's going in the right direction, we reserve the right to pull the plug at any time. And we were like, fine, totally cool, totally get it. So we get there, like Corey, like you just said, he flies out, 2 producers, all this, fucking boatloads of gear.
Like 24 Pelican cases.
It was ridiculous. It was absurd. So he flies out all this gear. His whole garage basically gets turned into a master control room, and it was fucking cool as hell too. Like that, we did that was the first time we did the drone. We had a live drone intro where it like flew down. It showed Lambeau, and it came and it panned over, and there Corey and I were. Okay, this is Packers News Live, and Gannett. Well, a certain section of Gannett absolutely lost their fucking
We did
mind
one show,
when
and
they
then
saw
and that live show got pulled.
when they saw Corey on camera. They lost their minds, and I was so pissed. I was so pissed. This is how pissed I was. This is true. I've never said this out loud. I've never told anybody this, but I'm going to tell it now because why not? I was so mad that night. So my head is like in a million places. Corey and I like, they shut us down. Like Corey, like I said, had brought all this fucking gear, had 2 producers, blah, 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 blah. We did one show where Pete Doherty came over and we interviewed Pete, and he was great. And we did the show.
It was a good show.
And then we got a call. Milwaukee's really upset. You got to kill the show. And I said, why? And they said, because Corey's on the show. And I was like, wait, what? Like, I told you Corey was going to be not only producing on the show, blah, 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 blah. Well, Milwaukee didn't know that, and they were pissed. And so they legit just shut it down. So now I'm like, I am so irate now. Like I said, I've been really kind of stressing about this job as it is. And then this happens. So I go, we're in Green Bay. I drive back to Appleton. I remember, I'll never forget. I went to see the Mission Impossible movie. I think it was Fallout was that one. And I'm like, just sitting there like, I'm so depressed. So then I go downtown afterwards. The Brewers are playing. I'm watching the Brewer game, and I am absolutely getting hammered. And I just drinking whiskey, whatever. I'm there, game ends. I linger there for basically till bar time, And at this point, I'm not as drunk, but I'm pretty drunk. And, I got to go home. And on my way home, I'm like, I want to go to Taco Bell. Got to go to Taco Bell. And there's someone driving like 25 miles per hour in front of me. I try and go around them. There come the lights. Get pulled over. And I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go. And I got a DUI. And that was it. So then I go in.
So then, and our show technically wasn't canceled. We had to pull it. So then we had to wait because Nagler's
wait. This is the best part. So I go and I'm like, of course. So then I go, got to take the blood. But they take me to jail. I sleep it out in jail because I got no one to call. It's like, I'm not going to call Corey at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or whatever it was.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah. So I go, I sleep it off. I use my one phone call. I get one phone call. I used my one phone call to call my boss and tell him I might be late to training camp practice tomorrow. Like, I made the mistake of telling the truth when I should have just said, yeah, I've got car trouble or something, blah, blah, blah. That's, I'm going to be late, whatever. Nope, I told the truth. And then Gannett freaked out because now I have a DUI.
Well, they have a protocol.
Yeah, well, kind of. And so we got left in limbo. They suspended me. So I wasn't tweeting. I wasn't at practice. And for like 3 days, I started getting messages from players' wives. Like, where are you? Where have you been? Are you okay? And everybody on the internet was like, where's Nagler? Blah, 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 blah. And meantime, Corey has 2 producers sitting in his house not producing anything.
We were playing
Settlers of Catan.
Settlers of Catan.
Settlers of Catan.
Like every day, all day.
That's all. We were just waiting.
Ridiculous. We were just waiting. And they left me hanging there for like 5 days, I want to say 6 days or something. And then finally they presented me with this deal. And I also want to make this public. When it happened, I instantly said, I want to say what happened. Like, there were so many people. Harold, who's one of our Patreon members, he literally messaged me on Facebook and goes, "This is ridiculous. Why aren't you working?" Blah, blah, blah. He was calling the Milwaukee office and saying, "Let Aaron," because everyone thought I had tweeted something bad or something.
Okay.
That's why I was suspended. But so I immediately said, "Look, we cover these guys, and if one of the players gets a DUI, we do a story on it. If one of your if one of the reporters gets a DUI, we should say something." And they were like, no, we don't think that's a really good idea.
Because journalists don't have the same standards for themselves that they do other people. And this is the truth of journalism that no one will ever tell you. It's like, this is why Bob McGinn has a problem with me, because I actually turned the tables on his ass. And I actually said, oh, wait, you're a public figure too, Bob McGinn. You know what? When you start talking and spouting your fucking nonsense, someone's going to actually call you out on it. And now you're mad about that.
Right. So, yeah. So I say I want to put out a statement. I want to just at least tell people what happened. And they're like, no. So then I get this meeting where they say, these are the terms you have to agree to. You are not allowed to drive to work. I live in Appleton. The team is in Green Bay. So my workaround was, okay, I'll drive to Corey's house because that wasn't work. That was Corey's house. And then I would walk across the street to Lambeau, or I would go to practice or what have you. So now I'm like super pissed. And Corey literally just said, basically, I want to go back to talking about the Packers live, do Packer transplants. You should just come work for me. And we'll do Cheesehead TV for real. And that was kind of how it turned.
Was this the training camp of 2017 or?
What was it? No, I think it was 16.
2016 training camp?
I think
No,
Randall,
I think it might have been. I think it might have been 17.
Cobb was still there.
Because you've only been at live. This is your third year. This is your third season.
Third year. Yeah.
This is your third season with full-time Cheesehead
Live
TV.
X, right?
So Cheesehead TV is about to come to an end, right? The catalyst is, the events of everything that was going on that summer and all that kind of stuff. And then you get to this point where you finally decide, I guess, Corey, I mean, you were the one who broke it this way. And you said, let's just do it. Let's just push all of our chips into the middle of the table and let's do Cheesehead TV. I mean, obviously you were upset about the events that had gone on, with Nagler and his employer.
Corey was so pissed.
I mean, what were you thinking at that time?
It was almost funny, except it wasn't funny.
Yeah.
But it was kind of funny because he was so fucking pissed.
Yeah, I mean, cause
with a through line of like, I am gonna burn Gannett to the ground.
Right. I mean, Corey, what were you thinking? I mean, you were obviously you were upset, but I mean, what made you think like, okay, you know what? Screw it. We're gonna push all our chips to the table. We're gonna do this.
I think there were a couple of reasons. I think, we had the studio. There were like things that were happening at LiveX that basically gave me the confidence that one, we could basically do the show and it would be a good thing for the company, not just for me personally. And that's kind of always been my focus of like, it was like we made enough revenue, or I could see a world where we could almost make enough revenue to be able to afford to have Aaron on full time. And the only way we could do that is if he was full time, right? It's one of those things where it's like, you can't do something until you do it. You can't just wait. If you're going to do it, go all in. And that's the only way you're going to see if it worked. And then, and then we got into Patreon. I mean, the other side thing is YouTube. Unfortunately, because I worked at livestream.com from 2011 to 2015, all of our Packer Transplants episodes were on livestream.com, which no one ever watches, right? So YouTube was a competitor to my company, not my company, but the company I worked for. So it was an issue, but had we put it on YouTube, I think we'd have a lot more subs and a lot more stuff because we had stuff on YouTube, but like our show wasn't on there anymore. So I knew we needed to go full in on that. And I kind of was excited to see what he could bring to the blog if he like manages the blog full time. And I also thought that, Aaron is relentless when he wants to be. So like Aaron is the reason we have all of the guests we've ever had on the show. I've never gotten one guest except for our greatest guest, Gert. But other than that, like I would literally like, I remember the thing we didn't talk about, which I think is actually the greatest time of our show ever was the draft. And it was the draft where freaking Roger Goodell called us live and we had Roger Goodell. And I was just, it blew my mind. I don't know what year that was. That was like right after the Super Bowl.
It was literally right before the lockout, which is why they were like pandering to fan blogs and stuff.
Got it.
Brian McCarthy was like, because I had said, hey, well, you should have Roger on the show. And he said, okay, he'll call you. When do you guys record? We were like, Wednesday night. And then legit that week, Roger Goodell.
And he was walking to the draft.
He was walking to Radio City because it was still here in New York. And he was walking to Radio City and literally was live on Packer Transplants.
And I just remember being like,
tour, but we'll take it.
I was like, how the hell did we just get the NFL commissioner on our blog, on our podcast that no one listens to? I was blown away. And I was like, and
amazing.
then Yeah, and then we would start to we got some players, we'd always get like, great, like I love getting the guys that I love getting the guys that, nobody interviews,
Man, we had Howard Green on literally 2 days after he signed with the team. That was one of my favorite moments because like it was just like he had literally been driving somewhere and then he got a call from his agent and had to turn around, and like a day later he was with the Packers, and then the next day he was on Packer Transplants. He was probably like, who the hell? What the hell? Jermichael Finley had the greatest of all time as far as like wondering who the hell we were, because he legit, I think I DM'd him on Twitter. I can't remember how we booked it, but like, so he was like, yeah, I'll come on. And Tom Pelissero, who then was covering the team for the Green Bay Press Gazette, said Jermichael came into the locker room and said, hey, what channel is Cheesehead TV on?
Oh my God.
Thinking it was like local cable or something.
That's great. I mean, you had gone in, this is it, right? You guys are going all in at this point. Everything's good. Everything's, it's almost like a high, right? You're riding at this point because you had finally decided to break free from, the chains of traditional media.
I got to admit, I was, even as pissed as I was and as miserable as I was at that old gig, Corey remembers, I was very much like, not weirded out, but I didn't know how it would working for Corey. It was like, I was pretty trepidatious.
He still has to hold his tongue sometimes.
Yes, I was bad. I will say, Corey's girlfriend, Rachel, we were joking the other day. I was like, my first month at LiveX, I had no filter, and I just like, it was basically this. I would just say whatever the fuck I thought. But then like, we had a meeting, I don't remember something, and Corey was so short with me, and I was like, oh, right. This is
work.
This is work. Right. Got it. All right. And I've been a lot better since then.
Yeah. I mean, so you guys we were talking before about, some of the writers and stuff like that had gone on and do other things. I mean, there's a lot of people that credit their, NFL success to you. I mean, what did you ever think that you would be a part of something that would trampoline, people up to whatever platform they wanted to be on? I mean, think about the Andy Hermans of the world, the Zachs,
right.
You know what I mean? The, all these other people, the Brandons,
we got Ross, we got Brandon, we got guys and gals out there doing stuff, and
Perry, Maggie, you know what I mean? All these people even before.
It's weird to see it now because of, everything we just talked about for the last hour, whatever, like the idea of what we were. It was just like trying to connect with Packer fans, which is what we still do. And we're still trying to do, and we're still trying to expand and give people platforms and voices. And our thing has always been, Tyler, I mean, this is a perfect example. This show, you pitched it and we're like, I've been thinking about this. And we basically said, oh, yeah, go ahead. Do it.
I didn't even know what this was until I just clicked on this link.
Until you joined in. Right. No, but I mean, like, it's funny because and that's something I brought up on the Cheesehead TV happy hour. It's funny how you guys are just so into whatever you want to do. You know what I mean? Somebody that you're giving, I guess the best way to put it is you're giving people who are a part of Cheesehead TV the opportunity to do what Cheesehead TV had originally done, right? And that's to break the mold and go out and do what you want to do with no bounds. You know what I mean? Even if sometimes it can be even detrimental to what you might think is a brand or something like that. Like, let's say, I know there's been times where articles have been written that you guys personally just don't even agree with, or maybe things people have said all the time, right?
Yeah, pretty much. There's a 50-50 chance I'm going to agree with a Corey Jennerjohn article. I'm just
right.
And he knows that. Okay, he knows that, and we've talked about it, and I respect the hell out of the guy. Okay,
sure.
But I'm just going to tell you right now, as a Packer fan, people will be like, you're the Corey who writes for Cheesehead TV. I'm like, no,
not that Corey. Right?
Totally no, I'm the asshole on the show, but I'm not the asshole in the writing stuff.
But you have people, like I said, we have articles that you may not agree with or whatever, but I mean, you have people that don't agree with you guys at all. I think you guys are just homers and you don't know anything other than, Green Bay, and you guys, your only goal is to get bought by the team and do all that kind of stuff. And I know you put on this front on social media. Maybe it's not a front. Maybe it's actually a really core belief, but I mean that you just don't care, right? But I mean, your goal originally was to help out with Packers fans. So how does it make you feel, both of you, when there's people out there that say, oh, this whole website, this whole everything that you do is not great, it's terrible, it's homerism, it's whatever?
I mean, who are those people?
Well, I'm saying there's people all over social. You know what I mean?
There's people on social. Are they eggs? They're
Well,
eggs.
you know what I mean? You're talking about trolls and stuff like that, obviously, but I'm
Yeah,
talking
but I
about
mean,
like real people who honestly believe that
I've
you guys
never
don't.
met a Packer fan who doesn't like Cheesehead TV. Let me just say
Well, what
that.
about Bart Winkler? Bart Winkler's a Packer fan who doesn't like Cheesehead TV. You know
He's
what I
a
mean? What
Packer
about
fan?
these people? Yeah, absolutely. That's what he says he is. You know, and we have these conversations all the time about what is a fan and what is whatever. You know, and I just want to get your guys' take on, you know, why do you think that this occurs? Why do you think people don't like you guys? I mean,
Because
it's
I think that people have an agenda, and I think most of the people that don't like us, they want to be us. And it not because I do think, you know, the whole hate us because they ain't us thing is a thing. But I also think if you look around at the sphere, people, you know, I don't know. Like what I think is funny is like the people that like some of our content, I think you kind of have to have a mentality of like, I don't want nerd football content, though I do want nerd football content, you know? So we kind of toe that line where we are nerd football content, but you know, I don't know.
It's just
I
look.
really don't care though, Tyler. I
We
could give a
don't.
shit
We
about
don't.
Bob McGinn. I could give a shit about anybody over there. I care about that team, but I don't care. Like being independent and being bootstrapped, and you know, like we don't say racist things. We don't talk. We don't abuse people, except for I abuse Nagler. We don't. We don't allow people to, you know, race bait or get mad at people because of their gender or because of their sexual identity or whatever, right? We're somewhat progressively liberal about that, but at the same token, like our intern that we had a couple years ago is very conservative. Like, you know, you can't care if you care about too many things like that. It's just it's not worth it. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
To me,
Well,
to
that's
me
what I wanted to
too.
hear.
The thing about like whoever doesn't like us, who, you know, like Corey says, who cares really? But I will say, like, look, I get it. There are different perspectives, right? And there are different ways to come at fandom or to arrive at the Packers. And look, if you don't agree with us, cool, man. That's great. Go do your thing. It's just this thing that you're talking about, like, which is clearly punching up. It's just trying to start drama. Like, I did that with Mike Florio 10 years ago. You know, it's boring.
We did it with Rob
It's
Demovsky.
defeatist. Yeah, and now he's a friend. You know, I was on Bart's show for a year. You know,
Yeah.
when I was on the beat, I would you know, call into his show every
Is that
week.
is that a byproduct of Cheesehead TV though? Is there a byproduct of you guys and your personalities? I mean, what do you think about that? Or you just don't care? You know what I mean? What do you?
I don't know. I think I get that there was a very specific time where I changed from the guy who breaks down the film of every prospect, and I got to find out every single nook and cranny of the scheme and blah, blah, blah. But man, the majority, I'm not going to say all, because that's obviously not true, but the majority of fans don't want homework. And it was like a real kind of light bulb moment for me where it was like, yeah, you can post or talk about on your show all these X's and O's and all this stuff about the salary cap and really just granular shit, like really nerd out on it. But ultimately, people just want to hang, man. People want to talk ball. People want to drink a beer and have some fun. Like, you go to Lambeau, you think anybody in the fucking stands after they score a touchdown is like really concerned about what the name of the route was or what the protection call was or, you know,
Right.
what kind of technique the wide receiver used to get open? No, man, they just care that the guy is in the end zone doing a Lambeau leap and they're having a fucking great time. So, like, I still want to know that, and I still do a lot of study. I still watch every game. Like, I do cut-ups every single week, and I'm still that nerd. It's just not how I produce the content anymore. And
Sure.
look, there are people that enjoy that, and that's great. Awesome. To me, and this is big-time Corey's influence, it's like, where are you coming from as a fan when you, like, hate your team so consistently, where your entire kind of being as a fan is, oh, they do everything wrong. Oh, they're wasting Rodgers' prime. They're going to fucking lose today. It's awful. I mean, that's the whole genesis of a lot of ball game left. It's like, man, just let it play out. Let's see what happens. Like the Jordan Love selection last year is a perfect distillation of this, where people are like, either really excited and thinking, oh, God, I'm really excited to see what happens with Jordan Love, or, oh, my God, the Packers blew it. It's the worst pick ever. They don't know what they're doing, which, of course, is ridiculous. But I think we ride the line of, and clearly this is what we've been accused of being homers, or
I mean, I am a homer, by the way.
I love working for the team. That's my favorite one.
To me personally, like you think about homerism and stuff like that, like, so you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I want to be a fan of the team. You know what I mean? I like the team. God forbid I like the team, you know, and it's, to me, it's frustrating to hear that kind of stuff. And obviously, you know, I'm biased, you know, because I tweet for you guys and stuff, but it's funny because like, I really feel like it's refreshing to hear somebody be like, yes, I'm a homer. I love the Green Bay Packers. God forbid. But, you know, I've had interactions with people on social who are just like, well, you know, you can't gatekeep fandom, you know, and people say that about you all the time.
You're right.
You don't want to. And
people say that to you all the time, Corey. Why do you gatekeep?
Well, I think that I've made a mistake with my semantics a couple times on Twitter where it does sound like I remember one time like just dropping a tweet and like going off to do my shit on a Saturday and like Big B and Joey are like DMing me being like, what are you doing? What's going on? And then I was like, I guess it did seem like I was gatekeeping. And look.
No, but here's my thing. You can like, okay, so it's a tweet. It's a fucking tweet.
No,
this
but
is the relationship
that
you have now.
No, but you shouldn't tell.
You don't agree with Corey? Keep scrolling.
No, I know, but it's
not
like
difficult.
I agree with the sentiment that you should not tell people how they should fan. But I also, so what I've been trying to do is to try to hoe a road where I am very opinionated about what it means to be a fan. But I'm not trying to impose, I guess I'm trying to walk this line of like, I'm not trying to impose my will because nobody wants a cult, right? Like nobody, like you want individual people who are doing their own thing. But it's a hard line because I'm pretty militant when it comes to like the Green Bay Packers. So
this is true.
Yeah, man. I think it's interesting that people, it's interesting that people are so, everybody there?
I'm there. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was just saying, I think it's interesting that people, you know, are so, they look to you guys, you know, they look to you guys for the Packers content and all that kind of stuff. So when they don't necessarily agree with something that you guys say about the Packers, you know, they tend to jump on that bandwagon of like, oh, you're gatekeeping or whatever and things like that. And, you know, I agree. Like you said, I don't think anybody should tell anybody how to fan, but at the same time, we're all welcome to our opinions and we're all welcome to share our own perspectives about how we feel about it. So just in the same way that you can tell me that Jordan Love was the worst possible pick the Green Bay Packers have ever taken in the history of the team, I can look at you and say that you should chill out and wait, you know what I mean? And see what happens, right. You know, because we don't really know. So, but I mean, I think that's just that ties into what Cheesehead TV, you know, started as and what Cheesehead TV is, right? And it's a thing for, you know, for the people, by the people, right? That sounds really cliche, but I mean, that's what
was Packers Lounge? For the fans, by the fans.
For the fans, by the fans, right? You know, but I mean, it's interesting.
One of our competitors, Alex Talish, who's a really good dude and used to run a website called Packers Lounge.
He was our competitor, but then we merged with him. Remember?
Yep.
Packers See, that's the thing. You just absorb them.
That's what we just kind of absorb people we like.
Just absorb them, right? Whatever
people we like, and just. But then they go on and do stuff. Like that's the other thing. It's like this thing. Brandon getting the credential for the pro day, and then Andy tweeting like, you know, the really nice thing he said about kind of trying to open doors for people. And we mentioned earlier all the writers who've like draft and develop. That's what we do. You know, we know, look, we're going to give you a platform. You're going to make or break yourself. Like we don't sit here and tell you what to write. You know, here's the platform. Go forth.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you guys do with me. That's what you guys did with me with Twitter. I mean, when I first started out, I mean, I didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? I just wanted to be a part of what you noticed. Were doing.
No, I'm kidding.
I tried to get Nagler to do the Cheesehead TV Twitter, and he's like, no, I need to get my personal brand on Twitter before I get Cheesehead TV Twitter. But what you
guys
do,
have,
what
but
you
that's
do
like
with
not a credential for the combine.
Right?
What's that?
I said you guys had a social person before, though.
Alex
right?
Talish was kind of,
that
but
was
not
Alex,
really.
Yeah.
Not like you do it though, and like you know that was the thing. Like the way you do it, like had you been with us like from the beginning, we would literally have like 200,000 followers on Twitter. There's no doubt in my mind.
Correct. No doubt.
Because like we basically plateaued, like we were just kind of like
Forever.
organic growth.
Yeah.
And if you look at like last season, like I think we started at like 27,000 and we're at 35,000 or something. I'm sure.
Almost 30.
You know what we didn't talk about is like all the OG Cheesehead TV merch. Look at that That's an OG Cheesehead TV football right there.
I got a couple of those downstairs.
Those are so great. We also had tons
What
of
was your
that we made.
set in your Inwood apartment, the one that's on the pictures?
That was my office.
Tweeting out
Yeah.
That was your office today. Okay.
That was
I
my
was
freelancer office that then I turned into a studio.
Tweeting out back when Nagler was still holding on a little bit to the acting. You know, you had your hat.
Yeah, everybody would be like, "Is he going to wear the hat or not?"
The hat was a very, very hot topic each and every
week.
The
OG hat. Man, guys,
I want to give Brandy a shout out in the comments. Brandy, I know you emailed us this earlier this offseason about being a moderator. Yes, the answer is yes. You're going to be a moderator. So look for an email soon.
Yeah. So, I mean, here we are today. We're at the final, we're coming to an end here. We could talk about this all night, but I want to know what's next for Cheesehead TV. I mean, what do you guys are here. You quasi sucked me into your world. You know what I mean? I'm doing your Twitter.
You emailed us.
I mean?
That's true.
That's true. Well, no, but it was your content that sucked me in, right? So
Gotcha.
Here we are. You know what I mean? You've got me. You've got so many amazing people producing Packers content for you, between the writers and the podcasts and the daily content, all that kind of stuff. What's next for Cheesehead TV? I mean, where do you guys go from here, right? We heard the origin story. We heard the almost collapse. We saw the rebirth. What's next?
Well, we have
Cheesehead TV, because this is usually how I find out.
Cheesehead TV Trivia is going to be starting the week of March 22nd. So we're bringing that back on YouTube. And so that's going to go hot and heavy. Then we do have an announcement that I don't believe we can make right now, but we have a new show with one of our podcast stables coming over the off season. So that's coming out. But then the end of this month, LiveX has hired a content producer in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and she is going to focus on cocktails, beer, or breweryana and alcohol content for Cheesehead TV, and some Wisconsin content and some food content. Basically, it's going to be a little more of me with gloves on making drinks to offset all the.
So the old-fashioned video is coming.
The old-fashioned, many old-fashioned. I'm going to do Wisconsin brandy old-fashioned. I'm going to do the way I do an old-fashioned. I'm going to have an old-fashioned conference and with people that are doing blind taste tests. I'm going to have a seasonal Wisconsin beers blind. I'm going to have, it's just going to be content for days. So we're going to have, we're basically growing up on the content sphere and really seeing what is going to play for the audience out there.
We're just taking that next step out into the the blogosphere, if you will.
And draft's going to be pretty, every year we kind of get epic for draft. We always say we're going to, but it gets a little better every year.
Doing all 3 days of the draft this year.
Unfortunately.
All 3.
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much, man. I obviously, I've told you guys before, I'm just so appreciative of everything that you guys do. And I appreciate, the website and the history of you guys and the OG Packers content, as I like to say. And, just thank you for the opportunity to allow me to tweet for you guys. And I'm excited about this show where we can take deep dives and stuff going on around the team instead of everything that's going on with the team, because there's already so much great content out there about that. And thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight. We appreciate you. And of course, subscribe to everything Cheesehead TV. You can find us on all of our social channels. Of course, you know where to find us. And thank you guys so much. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having us, Tyler, on the inaugural maiden voyage of Packers After Dark.
The inaugural episode, Packers After Dark. We appreciate you. Have a great night, everybody. We will be back with more Packers After Dark content. Of course, your new favorite late night show. And we'll see you soon. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.